Hi, this is Dave, Fell Running Guide. Welcome to this week's navigation task. This week we've got a lovely crisp winter's day in the Peak District, and I want you to identify each of those features circled in red. The map this week is the Ordnance Survey 1 to 50,000 scale map. So somewhere on that map are those features that I've circled on the photo. So let's have a look a little bit more closely at the photograph. What can we see? Well, we're on high ground, and if we look left to right on the photo, we go along and down, and we've got this big wide flat valley, and this is running sort of left to right, disappears behind this flat ground here. But then away up and on the other side we've got the first hill, and then an obvious deep or steep drop up, down and up the other side, and then from there on we've got a series of almost like peaks and troughs. So a high point, and then a drop down and up, another high point, and a drop down and up again, and then we drop down again, and then we've got this long ridge here, long ridge going up to the final high point. And the final feature is this big broad flat area just below us in the photograph, and that's in a straight line between us and the final hill on the right hand side. So can we make sense of that on the map? Well, there's only one big wide valley here, which is this, the Vale of Edale, and there's only one ridge with a series of peaks and troughs. We can't be here looking towards the north, because we'd have to be looking for high ground with peaks and troughs up here, and the high ground with the peaks and troughs is along here, along this ridge here. So if we were looking from northwest to southeast, the first hill that we could see away in the distance is this here, Win Hill, and then we saw that big drop down up the other side, which takes us to Loose Hill, and then from here we've got that long waving ridge. So let me just zoom in a little bit so we can see that in more detail. So Loose Hill was the next one, and then it drops down slightly, and a slight rise there to Back Tor. That was the next one. Then down again and up to there, the next red circle. Some people in the social media comments were thinking it was this viewpoint here, but it's not, because that is the dip after this high ground dip. And then here, look, is the long ridge going up to Mam Tor, which was the final of those circles on the ridge line. What about where the photo was taken from, with that big flat area directly underneath the camera? Let's have a look. Well, if we go to the north of the Vale of Edale, we've got some flat ground. We've got some flat ground there, flat ground here, flat ground here, flat ground here. Okay, so how can we work out which one of these flatter areas we were looking from? Well, if we go back to the photograph and imagine looking over to this, the final high point on the right hand side. If I zoom in, we've got the long ridge there, and that's almost at right angles to us. We're looking onto this face there with this flat ground directly underneath us. So if we were on this point here, how would that ridge look? Okay, so let's just think, if we were stood on this point here on Nethermore, if we were looking over to Mam Tor, we'd be looking up that ridge, straight up the ridge, and we weren't. We were looking over to it at more or less 90 degrees. We certainly weren't looking up that point there. So we can't be on Nethermore. We have to be further west. What about here above this flat area? Well, again, if we project a line across, we're still looking up the ridge there, aren't we? So we can't be there. So it's got to be much further west than that. What about Ringing Roger? Again, we don't need an arrow just to look along. We can see that we're not looking onto this face here from Ringing Roger. So that puts us over at this final flattening here. So let's have a look at that. What if we were here looking over that flat ground, and then in a straight line we'd be looking onto Mamtor, onto this side, this northwest side of Mamtor. That makes much more sense in our relation to that ridge along there. So the red circles show those features, and the arrow shows where the photo was taken from. I've just projected it across to Mamtor to help you understand that. So I hope you found that interesting this week. I think a lot of those were easy, but maybe the final bit as to where the photo was taken from a little bit more tricky. But thanks for watching. Look out for next week's navigation task. Bye for now.